Welcome to the AMM-CHC Policy Update, where we'll be exploring the latest legislative developments impacting healthcare, HCPs, and the medical media industry. I'm your host, Jason Karras. Joining me, as always, is Jon Bigelow, the Executive Director of the Coalition for Healthcare Communication. Jon's a board member and past president of the Association of Medical Media, and he's former CEO of KnowledgePoint 360 Group. Thanks for joining me today, Jon.
Thank you, Jason. Glad to be here.
So we're taping in mid-September, Jon. It's the final weeks of the 2020 campaign. What should AMM members be watching?
Well, I think the most important thing to watch is that for the first time, a major FDA decision is a big issue in a presidential campaign, namely the decision on approving a vaccine for COVID-19 infection. And this politicization of public health poses long-term risks to the FDA, and I would argue to the pharmaceutical industry and to the health marketing industry. From the early days of the pandemic, there's been controversy about the politicization of what should be straightforward public health guidelines on prevention, tracing, and management of COVID-19 infection. We're taping this program on September 18, and just in the last few days, more information has come out about ways in which the White House and the Department of Health and Human Services have squelched or rewritten CDC guidelines related to COVID. They've actually written and posted information on the CDC website that was contrary to the views of CDC scientists and without approval. They've even gone and edited the Morbidity and Mortality Weekly Report, which those of us who've grown up in the medical journalism world realize is a revered weekly publication on the spread of infectious diseases. In a Senate hearing just a few days ago, Dr. Robert Redfield, the CDC director, tried to push back a little and said things such as masks are the most important preventive factor in COVID, and was immediately blasted in a personal way by President Trump. So there's been a lot of this going on for a while, but even more concerning are the attacks on the FDA and the White House pressure for approval of a vaccine before the election.
So what's the background, the pressure that's being placed on the FDA?
Right. Well, one real amazing success story during this pandemic has been the unprecedented collaboration among the government and private industry to try to both develop very quickly and prepare for the logistics of distribution of a COVID-19 vaccine. There are multiple candidate vaccines in development. Companies are going ahead and starting manufacturing processes ahead of approval so that they can reduce the time to get the vaccine out. So that's been a great success. But still, it takes time to develop a vaccine.
Right.
Public health leaders like Dr. Anthony Fauci of the NIH have suggested that it's unlikely that a vaccine would be available until well into 2021. At that Senate hearing last week, Dr. Redfield said that a vaccine would not be ready for widespread distribution until the third quarter of 2021. Dr. Moncef Slaoui, the head of Operation Warp Speed, also has said that widespread distribution would not happen until the second half of 2021. And there are many experts who think it'll take a lot longer than that. After all, the record for developing a new vaccine is 4 years. And history also shows us that often the first vaccine for a disease has side effects and efficacy challenges. So it's not until the second or third vaccine that you really get one that is ready for prime time. And yet the White House keeps talking about having a vaccine before the end of the year. President Trump has been promising as recently as this week that the vaccine would be ready well before Election Day, and also that it would be immediately available for public use. He's sharply attacked Dr. Fauci and Dr. Redfield and others who say that that schedule is unrealistic. He minimizes the challenges. He charges that officials at the FDA are part of the deep state that's trying to to slow down approval. He's been pushing, of course, for approval of other agents like hydroxychloroquine with scant evidence of efficacy. He's moved Trump loyalists, most of them without any science background, into key communications positions at the Food and Drug Administration, and that has led to the politicization of press releases and to the now famous presidential press conference at which Dr. Hahn mistakenly was led into misstating the evidence for convalescent plasma. In short, President Trump is counting on a vaccine, or at least the promise of a vaccine, as a big tool in his reelection campaign. Now, obviously, everyone wants a vaccine to be developed quickly, but more important than speed is proof of safety and efficacy. Because if a vaccine is approved and is rolled out to literally hundreds of millions of people and starts developing significant side effects or proves ineffective, it's going to set back the entire effort against COVID-19 considerably. It will delay people getting vaccines. It will delay the development of second vaccines. It will cause the public to lose confidence in the process. It will be a black mark against the FDA. It'll be a black mark against the pharmaceutical industry. And it will certainly feed the anti-vaxxer movement and therefore hurt vaccinations and a number of other diseases as well.
What is the tangible impact that this has had on the FDA so far?
Well, FDA Commissioner Dr. Stephen Hahn has promised that the approval of any vaccine will be based on scientific evidence. He says the FDA will hold advisory committee hearings and that they will insist on efficacy of at least 50% before any agent is approved. But he's going to be under heavy pressure. There's already been indications that he has in the past caved into some of the pressure. More than just his own job will be on the line in this way. And it's very hard to push back on the President of the United States when he really wants something. So Dr. Hahn is in a really difficult position here. Dr. Peter Marks, who's the head of the Center for Biologics Evaluation and Research, and that's the group that would be responsible for approving any vaccine, has promised that he would resign if forced to approve such a vaccine prematurely. It is reported that others in the FDA have the same position, and I'd just like to offer a shout out that representing the AMM and other members of the Coalition for Healthcare Communication, I've had the opportunity over the last few years to interact with a lot of FDA personnel, and I am always impressed at their professionalism and their dedication. This is a really good group of people who are being largely demoralized. It's interesting that the biopharma industry has taken notice and has stepped forward to try to protect the FDA from the presidential efforts. 9 pharma companies that have key candidate vaccines and are vying to be first to market have come forward with a public pledge that they would not even seek approval until they had good phase 3 clinical evidence in support of their vaccines. And it's ironic that after all of this, recent poll results from the Harris poll and Stat and also from the Kaiser Family Foundation show that President Trump's efforts to talk up an early vaccine approval are backfiring, that large proportions of the public do not believe that they can trust an early vaccine approval and would not take the vaccine under those circumstances. So that is certainly a risk, but the bigger risk really is to the credibility of the Food and Drug Administration for the long term. It's vital to our industry and to the public health that there is universal confidence that the FDA is following science and data in the review of the efficacy and safety of new drug approvals. It takes a long time to develop that credibility. It takes just a couple of bad decisions to lose that credibility.
Yeah.
And it would open the door to renewed efforts in the White House and also in Congress to weaken the drug approval process for other drugs as well, which would have long-term impact on our industries. This is definitely something to keep watching.
In our August program, we discussed several of the recent executive orders from President Trump on lowering the cost of prescription drugs. What's the latest update?
Well, in July, 2 of the executive orders concerned drug importation and also rebates that drug manufacturers pay to pharmacy benefit manufacturers. And as far as those 2 executive orders are concerned, absolutely nothing has changed. They've had no impact whatsoever. And as I said in the August program, although the term executive order sounds very strong and definitive, actually what executive orders typically do is set up a process of developing regulations, which takes many months to play out. And frequently, the Trump administration has not followed up on its executive orders in any way. But there has been follow-up on another of those executive orders that was released in July. This is the one that challenged the pharma industry to come forward with its own plan for reducing prescription drug costs and threatening that if they did not do so by August 24, the Trump administration would put in place a scheme to limit the price that Medicare pays for drugs to those paid in a basket of other developed countries. Well, the pharma industry initially did not respond, and then just before that August 24 deadline, they did toss in a proposal which the Trump administration considered a non-starter. So a few days ago, President Trump issued a new executive order which purports to establish a most favored nation, quote unquote, pricing policy for drugs both under Medicare Part B. Those are the prescriptions that are provided in a doctor's office and which are paid directly by Medicare, and Medicare Part D, which are other drugs prescribed to senior citizens. President Trump is now highlighting that in his campaign speeches that he has taken action to limit prices. The reality is that, again, nothing is going to happen immediately on this international pricing scheme for a couple of reasons. The first is that the executive order is very vague, and so one still needs to figure out which drugs are covered. In the case of Part D, where the payer is not actually Medicare, you have to figure out how the prices would be capped. But President Trump also threw in a new wrinkle there, which was that he proposed to put this policy in place using the Medicare demonstration program process, which would allow him to short circuit some of the regulations.
Right.
That also may not work to his advantage because the biopharma industry is almost certain to challenge that process in court. So probably there's no immediate impact of this latest executive order either, except as a campaign talking point. But I think it is still something that we should all take notice of. It certainly is reminding us that if President Trump is reelected, he's going to keep pushing this international pricing scheme. Polls show that this is popular among voters. And very interestingly, President Trump's challenger in this election, former Vice President Joe Biden, has expressed interest in international pricing, and so has the House Speaker, Nancy Pelosi. So this is an idea that may have legs, and it bears watching in the new Congress next year.
Well, that's a lot of information for a short period of time, Jon. Thanks a lot for your insights. Lots happening on Capitol Hill. We'll check back on that and other Washington developments in another special AMM Coalition program next month. In the meantime, find more information at the Coalition website, www.cohealthcom.org. Email us your questions or concerns, comments, jbigelow@cohealthcom.org. Again, jbigelow@cohealthcom.org. Thanks for joining me today, Jon.
Thank you very much, Jason.
Have a great day, everybody.